keep reading on. It says, whether I'm rich, whether I'm poor, whether I'm sick, whether I'm healthy, no matter what, I can do all things. It's about enduring. And last week we talked about, in Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus makes some crazy statements in the section of the passage that we talked about. And he says, if someone slaps you on the cheek, turn the other cheek. How many, will be honest, how much is that your most common response if someone slaps you? Me neither. But he says, if someone slaps you, turn the other cheek. But sometimes we've understood this is that as Christians we just need to let ourselves be walked on, or that we need to be weak. But in context, Jesus is addressing something from the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, they had to put limits. The Mosaic Law tried to put limits so that it would limit vengeance. So they would say, listen, it's an eye for an eye. If someone takes an eye, you can take an eye. They were trying to limit it because someone would take an eye and they would kill their whole family. So the Mosaic Law was there to try to limit vengeance. And Jesus was trying to he wasn't trying to limit it. Jesus was trying to just make it so that vengeance didn't happen. Was this eye for an eye? If someone would steal your camel, you could kill their family. And Jesus said, no, it's not like that. You need to understand that the Old Testament was meant to try to limit that because people were doing whatever they wanted to do. The Mosaic Law was trying to limit it. The idea of turning the other cheek was going further than what the Mosaic Law wanted them to do. Jesus wasn't trying to limit it, he was trying to eliminate vengeance. And he was saying, listen, just because someone slaps you on the cheek, it wasn't so much that you would turn the other cheek so they could slap you again. Although that could happen. It was the idea of, if someone slaps you, if you confront someone, they slap you, sometimes you've got to turn the other cheek, walk away, and let God fight for you. It wasn't about just taking a slap, taking abuse. It was about taking the slap, turning the other cheek, and leaving it to God. And I asked the question, imagine what the world would look like if we left vengeance to God. That if we weren't concerned about what people did and how we could get back at them. Today we're going to be looking at a topic, and I will admit to you today that we're looking at a topic that I wish we weren't looking at. And many of you think, well, didn't you decide what topic we would look at? Yes, and it was a really poor decision. We're going to look at a topic I think that's caused a lot of confusion. And I'm going to be honest with you, there's no way we can solve this today. The reason why it's difficult for me to talk about, is because there'll be many people in this room, or some people in this room, that will have different ideas or variances on what this topic is. I mean, you don't have to talk to someone outside the church very long, or even inside the church very long, before it comes up. And it comes up in different ways, but it'll come up in this type of saying. Well, if God is so good, then why is there so much suffering in the world? I mean, we won't be able to solve this today. If we could, that would be amazing. But we're going to scratch the surface of something that I think we just need to try to bring better clarity to ourselves. And it's probably something that all of us have struggled with at some point in our life. I have to admit I'm a bit nervous about today because there will be some differences of opinions. And you know what? The amazing thing about the church is that we can be in unity and still have different opinions. But this is what I believe Scripture says to us. I want to ask you a question. I want you to be honest. Have you ever felt like life was going to crush you? Some point in your life, doesn't matter when it was, where you felt like this is more than I could bear. You thought, you know what, I possibly can't go on anymore. And you just want to raise your hands and say, God, why me? You know, why my family? Why my cousin? Why? And we've even said, and I know I've said this in my life, God, why are you doing this to me? Am I the only one to admit that, maybe? I have said that. God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you not taking this pain away, this money problem away, this sickness away? It seems like everyone else's life is easy, and my life is hard. Why me? Some people even go farther and wonder why God is causing them all this pain. And they think, God gave me cancer, or God did this. Some people believe that, well, God's paying me back because of something I did before. I used to ask God why He would allow such pain and suffering in the world. And then God asked me the same question. Because a lot of times, we can be the solution to somebody's problem. As far as I can see in Scripture, there are 3 reasons that bad things happen. And I think trying to identify which reason this is, which reason the hard thing you're going through is happening, is really, really important. So the first one we're going to call the fall of man. And we're not going to talk too much about that this morning. But that's when Adam and Eve were in the garden, Adam and Eve sinned, and sin came into the world. And when sin came into the world, sickness, disease, pain, suffering came in, because the wages of sin is death. So when the fall of man happened, we can blame Adam and Eve for that. Then there's another reason sin comes or we struggle. Wow, I can't spell. That's not right, eh? Shun. That says temptation. Should have spelled that out. Temptation. And sometimes we go through difficult times because we've bowed to temptation. Then, and I will admit this is the hardest one to try to decipher. Sometimes it's a trial or a test. I will be the first one to admit to you today, this is not easy to sort out. But it's worth giving some real thought to when you find yourself in the midst of tragedy. It says this in 1 Peter 1, 6-7. So be truly glad. There's wonderful joy ahead, even though it is necessary for you to endure many trials for a while. These trials are only to test your faith, to show that it's strong and pure. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold. Your faith is far more precious to God than mere gold. So if your faith remains strong after being tried by fiery trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day that Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world. 1 Peter 6:7. And I think what we need to understand today, and this is going to be maybe a little difficult for us to grasp, but every time in Scripture that the word trial is used in the original language, it's translated trial, but it's translated as a positive thing. When you and I think trial, we don't necessarily think positive. But the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and parts in Aramaic. The New Testament was written in Greek. And as you know, even translating from French to English, sometimes there's not. But when it's translated trial, it's always in the original language in a positive way. But the truth is, life is not always fair. And often we feel pressed. We're going to look at the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 4. It comes right after 1 Corinthians. And it was a letter written to the church in Corinth. Very creative, so they called it Corinthians. It's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. Therefore, since through God's mercy we have this ministry, we do not lose heart. Rather, we have renounced secret and shameful ways. We do not use deception, nor do we distort the word of God. On the contrary, we set forth the truth plainly. We commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God. Even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we preach is not of ourselves, but Jesus Christ our Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Christ's sake. For God, who said, let light shine of darkness, make the light shine in your hearts to give us the light of knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that all surpassing power is from God and not from us. Just talking about our bodies, this is jars of clay, something that's not as weak and not strong. And then it says this in verse 8. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. Many of us today, we might be feeling a time in our life where we're feeling pressed. Maybe you're feeling financial pressure. Maybe you're feeling relationship pressure, work pressure, stress pressure. Maybe sickness in your body or sickness in your family or death in your family has created pressure and life just doesn't seem fair. The question is, what do you do when you feel pressure? When we go through pressure, all of us have a response. My response is, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, my response is I get really irritated and edgy. And I like no one to talk to me. And if they do talk to me, they don't talk to me for long. Because I'm miserable. Some people say, you know what, I'm feeling pressed, I'm going to go for a walk. Some people, when you feel pressed, you go and you just be alone. Some people just like to read or like to pray. Some people get bitter and angry. Some people, it just comes out in anger. You find yourself driving down the road, someone cuts you off, and you want to give them the one finger wave. I have a friend who pastors in Ontario, and his daughter passed away from cancer when she was 11. And I remember hearing him speak, and I remember him saying that during that time he had so much built up emotion from that pressure. He said, I would drive down the highway, and you got to know him because he's like Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. He said, but I was just hoping someone would cut me off and then pull over and want to confront me because I had so much built inside that I would have loved to get out and just beat them. Obviously that's not good. But we all respond differently when we're pressed. And I think that if we could understand where the pressure came from, we could deal with that pressure better. See, if we could deal from the pressure, if we could just understand that it's just, someone gets cancer, we say, you know what, that's just the fall of man. People get sick. And it's not fair, but it happens. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. And if we could understand where it fit, it would be easier. We can understand that the fall of man is because of sin. If we can understand that there is going to be pain in the world because of the fall of man. That it happened through Adam, and we're not going to try to decide today if it was Adam or Eve's fault. read the story for yourself. I'm not here to point out whether it was the man or woman's fault. But, no, I'm just joking. Just joking. But if we can understand that that's where those things come from. But if we can understand that temptation is from the enemy. And the enemy comes to steal, kill, destroy. So when he is applying the pressure of temptation, which is always translated negatively, you can be sure that his plan is to steal, kill, and destroy. Where we have to kind of try to change our mind is that when we find ourselves in a trial, we need to try to figure it out that maybe this is God at work. And maybe he's trying to take us like a lump of clay, and he's trying to mold us into what he wants us to be. I'm not here to tell us this morning that it's easy to figure this out. But I'm here to say that it's really important to give it thought. Because if we believe everything is coming from God, that's going to really mess our view. We need to realize that we live a life in a world that is built on limitation. It's run by physics. If I go on the roof and I jump off, I'm going to leave a big dent in the ground. Because there's rules and there's laws in place. Gravity and physics. We live in a limited world. So some of our suffering is just because of the fall of man. But we need to understand that God is not limited. And so we need to try to figure out, is this a temptation or a trial? What if we could just come to a conclusion today that some pressure applied by God in trial is actually a good thing? And that I think some of the things that we would go through would be easier for us to handle if we just thought, God, okay, this is you working in me. Maybe if we could understand it as an opportunity, not an obstacle, a promise rather than pain. But we hear the word trial and we automatically think negatively because we think in English or you think in French. I mean, I feel pressure about things. I feel pressure about things that I shouldn't even feel pressure about. I make up things to feel pressure about. We all do. I feel pressure about my kids serving Jesus. I feel pressure about church and health and growth. When someone falls away from faith or leaves the church, I feel pressure. And pressure probably that I shouldn't even feel, but I do. We all have pressure. But how we deal with that pressure and what category we put that pressure in is really important. Maybe, just maybe what you're going through right now, God is with you. And maybe he's molding you to make you into something that looks more like himself. So I just want you to give that some thought today. There's a passage, we already read it. I won't read it again. Maybe he's trying to refine you or me to make me more like him. The problem is we think life is more about being happy. But God is saying that I want you to be holy. But if something doesn't make us happy, we're not sure what to do with that. But the refresher really reveals what's inside of us. Facebook does that. Everyone thinks everyone's family is happier than theirs because they see them happy on Facebook. And if we would all admit it, we would say, man, I wish my family took nice pictures like that. Look how well they get along. Listen, no families get along that well. No. They're all yelled at each other until the picture's going to get taken, and then they convinced everyone to smile. The sister's pinching the brother's kicking the mother, and then they just took a picture and it looks perfect. But it's not. Financial pressure reveals who we are. Marriage pressure reveals who we are. I tell people all the time when I talk to them before they get married, and they say, yeah, we've never fought. And I say, you know what? What you need to do is you need to find some situations that put on some pressure. Here's a good one. Sit your potential spouse down in front of internet that is really, really slow. Yeah. That'll bring out who's really in there. You know, or just make them use dial-up internet. You know, put them in front of internet that's really slow. Or if the guy plays sports, go to his sports games. Sports has a way of bringing out who you really are. I mean, looking for a promotion at work will bring out who you really are. Because people will step on their friend's throat to get a promotion. Because the pressure. When we're under pressure, that is when we were really revealed who we are. The question for you and for me today is, do you like what comes out? That's the question. It's the same for me, it's the same for you. When you find yourself under pressure and who you are really comes out, do you like who that is? I can remember like 3 summers ago, we were delivering this. My wife was doing wedding cakes at the time when she had Penny's cupcakes, and we were delivering this cupcake, this huge cake to Shediac. And it was like the hottest day of the year. We went out, we put the car air conditioning on like 30 minutes before, got the car as cold as possible, took this cake out. It was this huge cake. And it had all these big rosette things that she had made over the whole thing, so like dozens and hundreds of them. She brings it out, we put it in the back, and we start our way to Shediac. It's the hottest day of the year. And all of a sudden we look back and you can start to see the roses and everything on the cake start to And I'm looking at them, I'm driving, I'm looking at Penny, I'm like, how's it doing? Penny, she's like, oh, it's not good, it's starting to slide. And I never made the cake. I had nothing to do with the cake. I didn't know the bride. All the pressure was on her. And I lost my mind. And when I was under pressure, I did not like what came out. I started to blame her. Why would you put that cake together? That should be in 3 different people. Like I know. I just eat cake. That should be, why didn't you put the rosettes on in place? And Penny's just sitting there, just as quiet. I said, aren't you stressed? She's like, I don't have to be. You're stressed enough for both of us. And by the time we got there, all of the stuff had come off the cake and it was all just sitting on the board that it was on. We get there to Shediac and we get there and we have to bring this cake inside. Like there's no cake, there's a cake and then stuff around it, which I'm not sure, that had all the elements to a cake. And so I'm like, what are you gonna do? She's like, well, I didn't bring any extra icing. What's wrong with you? Who doesn't bring extra? Like, I know. Why don't you bring extra icing? This is ridiculous. You could be touch-ups. Look at this. Look what you did. Our name is ruined. Our name. She's like, Troy, you just need to calm down. So she calls Joanne and says, Joanne, can you bring some icing? Just calm like that. Can you bring some icing? I got a little bit of work to do. A little bit of work to do! You ruin these people's weddings. They'll probably get divorced because of this. Way to go. I'm not dramatic or nothing, just, we go inside, walk inside, she takes the thing, carry it up, like, all the stairs inside, there's people there, we walk in, they're like, what? We go inside, she takes all the icing off, puts all the ruined icing in the container, and I'm like, I'm out of here, I can't even take this stress, I'm out of here. She's like, where are you going? I said, it doesn't matter, I'm just not staying here. I left, went out in the car, sat in the car, because I'm very, very supportive like that. Joanne came, Penny went and took the stuff and piped the whole thing. When pressure's put on, who we are really comes out. The question is, do you like who that is? I could tell you story after story. I could tell you a story about a lady at Subway. I could tell you about this seat in my van that I couldn't get put back in. I gotta be honest with you, sometimes I'm not happy with what comes out. James 1 verse 2 says this. He says this in the NIV version, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance finishes its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. In the message version, message paraphrase, it says this, consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come to you from all sides. You know that under pressure your faith is forced into the open and shows its true colors. Ain't that the truth? So don't let it get out of anything. So don't get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work. Become mature and well developed, not deficient in any way. So the question is, the fall of man, temptation, or trial. Yes, the world is sinful. There's sickness and pain. Not because God causes it, but man chose it. And we need to look at trials in a more positive way. If we could just understand that translation, that in the more positive way, it would help us to understand this process a lot better. And here's how I would explain it to you. Temptation has one design. That design is to crush you. That's what temptation is designed for. Trials are meant to make you stronger. To be able to fight. Because what matters is what's really inside of you. Who's fighting for you. Temptation is meant to crush. Trial is meant to make us stronger. But the issue is that we understand it as bad. We think of a court case, there's a trial, so the truth is going to be revealed. And that's a good way really to think about it. The truth is always revealed in pressure. How many here have ever told a lie? Keep holding up your hands. I don't want your first lie to be in church. But sometimes we'll tell a lie and we hold on to that lie. But then have you ever had the truth come out later? And even if there was consequences to the truth, do you remember how much better you felt? The truth is always revealed. We think we can hide it, but the truth always comes out. A few things I want us just to keep in mind today. Temptation is not from God. If you're finding yourself tempted to do something that you know is against His word, that is not God. Okay? If you find yourself being pressed and your life being crushed, look back and one of two things happened. You either made You lived in disobedience and you walked in temptation. But if you made the right decision and you're feeling pressed, it's a trial. That is the deciding factor. Usually, if it's a temptation or a trial. If you struggle with addiction and you have this temptation to go back to that addiction, some people say, God's just testing me. No, he's not. The devil is looking to steal, kill, and destroy you. And he wants to crush you. But there is resistance if we realize who is inside of us. The Bible tells us that the devil is like a roaring lion, seeking whom may devour. Just a few things. I mentioned this years ago, but I'll mention it quickly again today. Lions, the Bible tells us that the devil is like a roaring lion, and he compares these two things so that we can understand the devil better, because it's easier to understand a lion than it is to understand the devil. So if you look at a lion, you'll learn about the devil. That's why he compares two things. Lions sleep for 20 hours a day. Lions are not always attacking. And the devil's exactly like that. The devil will lay in wait until that opportunity. And then he will try to push you to temptation. Lions stalk their prey. The devil's just like that. Lions will stalk. They don't just run and charge because they're not fast enough, smart enough. They don't have the stamina to catch the deer or the antelope. They will stalk their prey, and their goal is to hang around long enough until the deer lets their guard down. The devil's just like that. Lions prey on the weak, the sick, and the alone. They'll sit and watch a herd for a long time until they can pick out an animal that's young, that's sick, or has wandered off by themselves. And you know what? The devil's exactly like that. That's his biggest lie. You don't need to go to church. You don't need other people. You can fight this on your own. And he is just waiting until you let yourself become that one coal that gets removed from the fire. Lions set a trap for their prey. The old lion with the big mane, they'll stand out in the open, and when the antelope come along, the lion will jump up and they will roar, and then the herd will panic, and the herd will start to run, and they'll run right into the trap of the younger lions. The devil's exactly like that. He doesn't announce when he's coming. He's just there. He's there. He shows himself in sickness. He shows himself in pain. He shows himself in temptation. And all of a sudden he's there. And what happens if we're not careful with what we fill ourselves with? We panic. And then we start to run, and we run right into the trap of the enemy. How many have ever done that? Lions hang on to their prey. People think that lions will just grab their prey anywhere, and that's kind of true. They'll grab it by the back, the front, the side, the leg. But the main goal of the lion is that it will work its way from the leg to the back, all the way up to the neck, because the lion has the sensor in its mouth that he can actually feel the jugular. And when he feels that, he knows. Yes. You know what? The devil's just like that. The devil's not always going in for a kill. He's just looking to hang around. And if he can hang around long enough, he knows he can wear us down. Temptation. You need to understand that temptation is designed to crush you. So the number one thing we need to remember is temptation is not from God, but some trials are. God uses trials to test your faith. Is God using this trial to change me? A popular one is people say, you know what, I'm having struggles with my money. It's like I have more month than I have money. Is this, where's this? The problem is you have to really look into it, because sometimes it could be in more than one location, so you got to be careful. But I believe that often God will throttle our money when we don't honor Him with our money in order to get our attention. So He will throttle it down, because He wants you to submit. He's saying, listen, if you will just listen to me about this money, I will mold you into what I want you to be. But as long as your money is controlling you, you've bowed to the temptation. So I'm going to throttle your money until you give it to me. And I'm not talking about tithing, I'm talking about honoring God with our money. Sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we think, man, I wish I had more patience. You need to pay close attention to those times, because I would tend to put them here. That God is trying to mold something in you. I live there. Maybe you're having struggles at work. It could be something else, or God wants to use that to help you deal with people, or maybe even your own issues, maybe conflict. Number 3, trials are designed to make you stronger. Trials force what is out in the open. But here's the problem. When we find ourselves in a trial that's designed by God, most of us do one of 2 things. We either run and we get out of there, or 2, we shut down. So we say, you know what, I'm going through a hard time, I'm getting out of here. So if it's a hard time in a relationship, we run from the relationship. If it's difficulty in a situation, we run. If it's difficult with money, we just go spend money. If it's whatever it is, we just run, we avoid it. And the second thing we do is we just shut down. And we say, you know what, God, I know you're trying to make something, we wouldn't say it like this because this would sound very unspiritual. God, I know you're trying to make something beautiful of my life, but that ain't happening. Not me. Not today. So I don't read, I don't pray, I don't worship. I just shut down. Why do most businesses fail between year 1 and year 3? Because when life gets difficult, we run. Or we avoid. You look at past relationships you've had in the past that were tough. And I don't just mean marriage relationships or dating relationships, but all relationships. And sometimes we look back at them now and we say, you know what, I should have really stuck that out. I should have did a better job. Because if I would have let God mold me into who He wanted me to be, maybe that relationship would have been okay today. Why is the divorce rate over 50%? It doesn't matter if it's in the church or out of the church. Why? We run. We need to understand that we're like gold refined in the fire. And when you put gold in the fire, the impurities come out and they're revealed. But then you're left with something that's more pure. Sin made the world sick and evil. Temptation is designed to kill you. Trials are designed to refine you. We sang about this today, but it says this in 2 Corinthians like we read earlier. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. We're persecuted, but not abandoned. We're struck down, but not destroyed. Many of us think, how can I be pressed on every side but not crushed? How can I be perplexed and not despair? In closing, how do I be persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed? It comes down to one thing. It's who's inside of you. It doesn't come down to, well, I go to church and I like music. Who's inside of you? It doesn't come down to, yeah, I've modified my behavior and I act like a Christian. Who's inside of you? Who makes the decisions? Who controls your life? It matters who's inside of you, and it also matters who's applying the pressure. Because if God is applying the pressure, you will not be crushed, but you may be pressed. You may be persecuted, but you won't be abandoned. It talks about that in the Bible in a beautiful story about the potter and the clay. The Bible talks about it a lot, about us being the clay, him being the potter. The truth is, clay is just dirt and water. That's all it is. But when the potter grabs that dirt and water and puts it together, and he starts to mold it, he does that because he sees potential. And if he just touches it as it spins on the wheel, pressure in the right place makes something beautiful. Now, if I put a large clump of clay on a wheel and I began to spin it with Penny behind me like the movie, you'll never watch that movie again. I guarantee you that I'm not going to make something beautiful because I don't have the skills, the ability. God does. See, I hear all the time in this area, you know, God is doing this to me. God has done this. If you feel crushed, you need to understand that sin does that. God doesn't crush. He molds. Just a bit of dirt and water. But if you find yourself under pressure, understand that the God of the universe sees potential in you. And he just wants to make it into what he's designed it to be. Like, I'm pretty confident that God wasn't too happy with me on my cake delivery from 2013. I like to believe, like I just delivered a cake yesterday, there was no yelling. There was no melting of the cake either, so that probably helped. But it's a process of him making something beautiful. And two things will decide if you're crushed when you're pressed. What's inside of you and who's applying the pressure. And I believe that if we find ourselves in difficult situations, if we just look, God, did I take a wrong turn because I disobeyed you or I gave into temptation? Then you can find it here. It will try to crush you. Or God, do I find myself in a trial where you are trying to teach me something? I've obeyed you and you brought me here. What do you want to teach me? Avoid the temptation to run or close down. Because if you can let God run its course in your life, he will make something beautiful. But if you run often happens is we end up running directly here. Because there's nowhere else to go. Because if you run this way, you don't run closer to God, you run farther away. Why don't we stand together? Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for who you are. God, I pray that somehow, through your word, through hearing your voice, that somehow, no matter what situation we find ourselves in, that you would help us identify, is this sin or temptation? And if it is, how do I get out of that? But if this is you trying to make me into who you want me to be, God, I will not run. I will not hide. Fill me with your love and your grace and your mercy. And I will stand and you can mold me to who you want me to be. So what I would like us to do just in closing today is take just a moment and think of the situation, whatever you're in right now. If you're feeling pressure of life, think back. What road did you take? Did you take temptation? And if you did, then that's okay. We make bad decisions. There's a way out of that. God will lead us.